recording. Okay, here I am in Indiana. Unexpectedly, I had a interesting trip here. I came because my father passed away. Wasn't intending to be here, but here I am. So now I'm making you a video to watch. So I had a lot of different things I wanted to talk about, but I think this video is going to go out with my prayer letter, and I think what's on my mind is justice. So what is justice? What's the definition of what is that? So the dictionary definition of justice is just behavior and treatment. Okay, so justice is just. What's just? Something. So you look up just, it says fairness. Okay, what's fair? So the biblical definition of justice would be perfect righteousness. That is, righteousness without flaw. If you have perfection by a nature or reasonably or rationally or logically would be righteous. If you're perfect, you would be without flaw and you would be righteous. So we all have an inherent desire for justice, right? We want things to be right because we were made in the image of God. But, well, let me just read from my notes. God is the only righteous one, therefore God's nature cannot tolerate any imperfection or actions. God is righteous, therefore nothing he does is unjust. So when we question God, why would God do this? Which is okay in our flawed understanding of God, but God doesn't only allow, he perpetrates or creates things that we seem to think are unjust. God's total justice would be to make us suffer all in eternal hell. That's why hell exists. That is a function of his justice. Well, we don't deserve to go to hell. I'm not that bad, right? Well, are you perfect? So to understand this, let's think of the Jewish understanding. So God dwelt in the temple in Jerusalem. That's where God interacted with man. So the closer he got to Jerusalem, the closer he got to God, the closer he got in the temple to the Holy of Holies, which was the room where God physically dwelled on earth, the more righteous you had to be to enter that. So there's the Jews had a whole thing to do to make themselves clean. The Levites or the priests would select somebody to go into the room, the Holy of Holies, where God dwelt, but they would tie a rope around them in case they're not clean enough, because death is what we deserve, and if we're not perfect, then we will die. So the Jews could pull the dead guy out of the Holy of Holies because he wasn't perfect. He wasn't deserving of being in God's presence. Pretty harsh in our standards. We'll tell you why that seems harsh as we go on. But God is righteous. Nothing he does is unjust. So even his wrath and his anger, which are results of his just nature, are righteous. So we don't consider anger and wrath righteous, and it usually isn't when it comes from us, and we'll talk about why. So to give you an idea of God's wrath and justice and anger, I'm going to read from the most popular book in the Bible, not really, Nahum, chapter 1, verses 2 through 6. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord takes his vengeance and is filled with wrath. The Lord takes vengeance on his foes and vents his wrath against his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. His way is in the whirlwind and the storm and the clouds and the dust of his seat. He rebukes the sea and dries it up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before him, the hills mount away. The earth trembles at his presence. The world and all who live in it. Who can withstand his indignation? Who can endure his fierce anger? His wrath is poured out like fire. The rocks are shattered before him. So his wrath is infinitely higher or more powerful than anything. And the whole earth, because of our sin, is deserving of his wrath, and he will pour it out in his time. But God. So that sounds pretty harsh. But if you want justice, that is justice. You deserve that. You deserve that not because of any action, because of your heart, sinful heart that you were born with. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. So how does this affect our actions? So Paul says in Romans chapter 3:10 that no one is righteous, not one. So we were created in God's image. So in Paul's words, none of us live up to God's image. We were created in God's image in perfection, but we went astray. So we are broken, perverted, unrighteous in our nature. We are not perfect. So you may look at a person and say, but he has all these good things, and overlook his fault. But one little fault is enough to condemn him compared to God, who has no fault. So we were created in God's image, and we have a natural desire for justice. But because of sin, our idea of justice is perverted. So we often think we lived a good life, we don't deserve God's wrath. That's our perverted view of justice. In the whole world, we have a whole system of our government called the justice system, and it's perverted. It's not perfect. That's why there is no righteousness in it. We seek righteousness in these worldly things, but we can't have righteousness. They'll never be perfect, no matter how hard we try, because of our own volition, because we are not capable of perfection in our own right. So you'll see us seeking justice. If you look around the world, we all seek justice. If you look at social media, you will see people giving their opinions, thinking that their idea of justice is perfect and that their righteousness is perfect and their opinion is perfect, and so you deserve their wrath and anger. So we're going to talk about this. I'll have an example of my own version of justice and how that's perverted. So oftentimes when we're seeking our own version of justice, you can tell through what makes us angry. So what makes me angry is bad drivers. I do a lot of driving, and I think I know how to drive better than other people. I think my way is righteous, and because I think my way is righteous, people deserve my anger and my wrath when I'm on the road. That, unchecked, is my version of justice. It is in fact me trying to be God. So when you are angry at something, are you angry because your personal self-righteousness, you think you know the right way, or are you something else that God calls us to be? So most human anger comes from a desire of our own idea of justice. But our own justice is never totally righteous. But God provided a way for us to be righteous or to appear righteous before Him. All of us are deserving God's wrath equally because we've all sinned. But God gave us the perfect sacrifice in His Son Jesus that took the place of God's wrath on us. This is another part of God's nature. So God's nature is justice, wrath, and anger. But He is also equally infinite in love, mercy, and grace. And because we as Christians have received By nothing we've done, nothing we've earned. We don't deserve it. What we deserve is hell. We deserve God's wrath. But God, because he loves us, poured out mercy and grace. That is, giving us what we don't deserve out of love by sacrificing his son. So I'm going to read Romans chapter 12. So to show how we are to act, because we have received God's mercy and love. Instead of our own righteousness and our own self-righteous anger and wrath that we want to pour out on others, this is what God calls us to. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Don't post stupid stuff on Facebook. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. So if somebody cuts you off in the road, do not pay them back. Forgive them. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge, not yours, because your view of justice is perverted. I will repay," meaning God will repay. God will take care of things, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will help heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. What is good? Not what comes from our heart, but what God gives us. It's not goodness is not a list of things that we do. Goodness is us giving ourselves up and becoming more like Christ and being obedient to God. Okay, I'm really preaching. So our sense of justice is wrong. We are to lean into God's justice. We are to live in faith of God's promise of justice. So as Paul said, and he's quoting Job, actually he's not quoting Job. It is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. God said, he gave us a promise, and God is perfect and he keeps his promises, that he will take vengeance on the world, not you. It is not up to you to be God. It is you to be a servant of God, a total slave. To empty yourself. Me too. This goes for me because I am not perfect at it. It's something I'm learning. It's in our sanctification. It's part of our path to become like God or like Jesus. Our sanctification is becoming holy. It is progressing, emptying ourselves, or as John the Baptist put it, less of me and more of him. That is our goal. Do you think Jesus, if he would come now, would he drive on the road and yell at everybody and give them the middle finger? Of course not. And if he did, he would be righteous in doing so because he's the only one that lived without sin. But as God's son, or God coming to earth, he lived, he did chastise people because he could, but for most, he showed mercy and compassion. That's what you are called to do. All right, done preaching. Love you guys. Thank you.